You are listening to Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls, a podcast where three women discuss horror movies from the silent era through the 1970s. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, and Anchor. Timely, topical, terrifying. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girls, Ghosts, Ghouls. This has been an interesting journey to get to this one. So Rebecca came up with what we were going to be watching, which is a movie called Supernatural from the 1930s, starring Carol Lombard. And the issue with that one was it wasn't easily obtainable. So it's not actually streaming. Rebecca was able to find a copy, but it was like one of those things where it's a website, so you couldn't really easily put it on your TV.
Yeah, you have to cast from your phone.
Yeah. So and I hogged the copy from the library because that's who I am. And so we decided it wasn't going to be a fun conversation to have when all of us couldn't really watch the movie, because watching something on your phone or streaming for your phone is very irritating. I will say we might revisit in a future date, so we won't really talk about it much because I know we've watched it sort of, but it's something. I'll leave it at that. And so Betsy countered with, well, why don't we do burnt offerings? It's streamable. It's currently on Pluto TV. You have to deal with commercials, which kind of we'll get to how that might add to the not greatness. But it's 1976, stars Karen Black of Trilogy of Terror fame, amongst other things. She's very prolific. A favorite of ours, Bette Davis, is in there. Eileen Heckart, she's an amazing actress who shows up in so many things. Oliver Reed, who was really favorite, Burgess Meredith, which you might know more from the Rocky movies. So it's just a phenomenal cast for sure. But what'd you ladies think?
I think the cast lied to us.
It had so much potential.
This was another similar one where I looked at the cast and was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm so sorry. I did that before and the movie was awful. And I don't think this one was awful per se.
Yeah.
But
we didn't say what the movie was about. So a quick blurb. A family moves into a large old mansion in the countryside, which seems to have a mysterious and sinister power over its new residents.
Sure.
So, dealing with kind of your classic haunted house, there is a problem and family isolation, and all those
things.
Here's
the problem. The movie was about as dull as that write-up is.
Yes. What was the runtime? Close to 2 hours?
I have to look it up, but 2 hours and
let me tell you the trials and tribulations of me watching this film, because I need to let you guys know this.
You need to get this out of your system. Go.
I did. I watched it for an hour and so many minutes, and then Bette Davis started to seize, and then it froze. And I couldn't get it to replay. I could not get it to play past that point. And so I shut it completely down, turned my whole TV off, turned it back on, brought up Pluto TV, watched it again clear through, because if you want to fast forward, you have to fast forward in 5-minute increments so you can watch all the commercials. Watched it in its entirety again to the exact same spot, and it froze again on Bette Davis in bed. And so I bought it. Delivered to my house yesterday so I could finish it.
You are dedicated, Betsy.
Yes. Hour 56-minute runtime without commercials.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And then with commercials, it's 40 hours.
I think so. I think you're right.
Truly. I was so frustrated that I was like, we're seeing this festival on Sunday, and I was like, I'm not going anywhere, because I am so mad right now at this film that I am not fit for human consumption at this point. And so it twice, and then again twice yesterday. So I needed to say this, because I have watched this movie so much, and it is nothing until really that point. It's when she kind of like is collapsing and like is having her fit that you start to realize that the bad stuff is happening, really. So
there's minor hints in the beginning.
I would say there's major ones before that too, but the action doesn't pick up until then. Was just how I would put it, because you've already got the pool incident.
Pool incident,
from the beginning.
The creepiness of
getting introduced to the house, talking to the brother and sister. The kid's outside playing. He scrapes his knee falling from the gazebo. And it's a little bloody. Your normal kid injury. But you see later in one of the flower pots, one of the house plants, tiny little leaves blooming where before the plant was completely dead. So you're like, huh.
Everything in the greenhouse was completely dead too, pretty
Yes.
much. Yeah.
The whole
So, yeah.
house is pretty dead at first. Like it's not run down, but it's also not in great, like 100% shape. It's like, okay.
Order of rundown and just needs a little work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These actors are good. I know these actors are good. I have seen them be good in
Yep.
things. Even the kid. I found out like the kid who plays the kid. If
Mhm.
you've ever seen the movie Girls Just Want to Have Fun,
I have.
he's the kid she dances with. He's the lead in that. When
Oh,
he
is that
gets
him?
a bit older, that's
Oh my
him.
God, it is him. I could see it now when I'm looking at it. I did not even pick up on that. How funny.
Yeah.
I
So
I just wrote because I was like, oh, Oliver Reed, Prospero. He was a gladiator trainer,
Yeah.
former gladiator in the movie Gladiator.
Much better in that than this for sure.
Oh God, yes.
I think that was one of the problems. So the cast had no chemistry with each other.
Yeah.
And
no.
Bette Davis apparently hated everybody she acted with. She thought they were unprofessional and terrible. There is like there's the kid does his best. I think the kid actually pulls it off more than any of them. Just some point he goes a little too far, like when he's recovering from the gas inhalation and he's like, I don't
A
even
little
know the
bit.
noise he was making. It made no sense. I mean, not that I've been around all the people that have like almost nearly died of carbon dioxide poisoning, but it just seemed a bit
It
weird.
felt a lot. It felt a lot.
And
But
And I
over the
thought,
course of the movie, I mean, they're trying so hard to just slowly ratchet up the tension with each of these incidences that happen, and it goes nowhere.
I
yeah,
love
well, go ahead,
Karen
Betsy.
Black. I love Karen Black.
Oh yeah.
Let me just say this. I adore her. However, in this movie, more than any other movie, she seems so cross-eyed vacant all the time, which I think she's supposed to be like, she's like, I'm under a spell. And I'm like, that's not what it comes across as. It comes across
No.
as you're lost in your own home. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I
Where
think
she had a condition where she just wasn't sure what was actually on the script. I don't know. Like it's not till the very end where she comes into it. The rest of it just seems like she's just struggled the whole time to
Oh yeah.
feel
Wow.
what was supposed to be going on.
yeah, because you're
But
like,
back to I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say with that, yeah, it was similar. It felt like maybe she needed some more time for her lines to study them.
Rebecca, I think you also made the point that they were trying to escalate the incidences, or was that Betsy?
Yeah,
No, that
yeah.
was
So I thought the problem was they hit a peak and then like came down from it. It was like weird. Like so you had like these small little things going on, and then you had the dad almost kill kid in the
the
pool,
kid.
which I kind of thought that was kind of like really the high point, and then that I think was followed by the gas
Gas was
incident.
after that. Yeah.
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 So and that felt like they weren't an escalation from one to two. It felt like it was just on the same plane, like a plateau. And then therefore, when you finally get to Aunt Elizabeth, Bette Davis having the weird fever seizure issue, it was kind of after the fact. And
Well,
then
and
eventually you go back to the pool where the kid nearly drowns again. So you're like, but you've already arced up. I mean, even when Bette Davis dies, it's just already
yeah.
flat.
And in between that, in between the incident of him, this poor kid, the kid, the father almost drowning the kid, and then the kid getting gassed to death almost. Um, in between
Kind of like
that,
what
you
happened
have
to
that
Cat of Nine.
weird section where Karen Black is like, let's just forget it. Let's forget that you tried to murder our son. Let's put that behind us.
Happen.
Oh, he's
We
fine.
have enough
Shake it
money to
off.
pay
Shake
for
it off.
therapy because this house was so cheap.
Yeah. And well, let's go back to that. So I guess this is the whole problem to begin with. I mean, I know there's a trope in the reality, being a white person, I could say this, where white people in horror movies are stupid.
Oh yeah.
Um, it starts right away in there, because here's what's funny. So you have Eileen Eckhart and Burgess Meredith playing the Allardyce siblings, and they're the ones that they're speaking to rent out the house, and they're creepy. I mean,
Very.
I would say Eileen pulls off a less creepy vibe. You know, she seems more maternally and like, oh no, I really, but Meredith Burgess Meredith, sorry, I'm dyslexic. He pulls off creepy way. I mean, he even pulls off like creepy, like bad touch uncle creepy at some points, in my opinion. Like, there's a whole bunch of no. But here's the funny thing. So they're like, okay, you can rent the summer, or you can rent the house for the whole summer for $900. So like, it's like what, 3, 4 months? It's from July to September.
Yeah.
So 3 months. So, nice, good deal, right? But and the dad, played by Oliver Reed, Ben, he's like, what's the catch? And they're like, no catch, no catch, except that our mom's gonna be here. She just stays in her room. You don't need to worry about her. Just bring up a tray twice a day. She just sleeps and does her collection. You won't even see her. Okay, neither one of them went, all right, well, can we meet your mom? One, the fact that they were considering it means, I mean, I would think that they should have been like, can we meet her? I mean, she wants to meet the strangers running around her house. Suspicious. They don't even offer to say, maybe you should meet her before I leave you alone in the house. Who leaves their 90-some-year-old mother alone with somebody unless they want the mother to die? Like, there's
Yeah.
things that I'm like, there's
I'm
something
not gonna
weird right here.
Like, if mom and I had a house, I'm not gonna leave her, and she was limited mobility and whatnot. I'm not going to leave her with strangers who just decided, yeah, I'll rent it. Like, God, who knows what they could be.
And then as a person would be liable for this person, plus keep in mind, guys, this is the 70s. There are no cell phones. They're out in the country. There's no instant access to healthcare. There is no life alert button. There's none of that. If anything happened to this woman in the 3 months that you're in this house, it's fucking on you. Plus, what if you never see her and she's dead in her room and they come later and now you got like, neglect charges and involuntary manslaughter. Like, there's all these reasons why, like, anybody of any sound mind would be like, no, or at the very least would have said, let me see this woman and meet her. I need all the emergency contacts. I need all her health conditions. I need a liability waiver. But these people just leave and then they talk about it. They're like, cool, yeah, let's rent this house for $900 a month to take care of this perfect stranger that we haven't ever seen.
Yep.
It's a blunder of errors from minute one. And then it just gets dumber and dumber as it goes along. Like, at what point?
Yeah.
And at what point, if you are Benji, who his wife is like totally brainwashed and is like, I love the house, why wouldn't you just take your kid and leave? Like, the minute you almost killed your own kid, why didn't you take your kid and leave? Take your kid and your aunt and get the hell out. I just don't.
Well, and it's another thing to point out. So, like, yeah, so the whole thing, like first, like I said, that whole intro really took me out of anything. I'm like, yeah, this is just dumb. And then when they get to the house to actually rent it after they made the decision, the siblings are gone. There's just like a packet on the door with some keys. And I'm like, not even as far as you can tell, and this seems very consistent, not even a way to contact the siblings should anything happen. I mean, I'd have been on the phone with the cops and I've been like, hey, we were supposed to rent this house, but there's this old lady living upstairs and I have no way of contacting her kids if something happens. So I don't feel comfortable.
Right.
And what if they had changed their minds and then just didn't show?
Which is funnier because then later, you have Karen Black as Miriam Rolfe, who her excuse for her creepily being more and more in this house and not going outside of it or even interacting much with her family at all is she has to take care of Mrs. Allardyce, the old woman that was left behind. And like, she keeps like, even when Aunt Elizabeth dies, she doesn't go to the funeral because she can't leave Mrs. Allardyce alone. Like, her fucking kids just ran off.
Yeah.
Figured you'd show up when you'd show up. So
her kids had no problem leaving her alone. What about you? I mean, come on.
And throughout the movie, and I think they did this well. This is one thing I'll give them credit for. you can see Karen Black slowly transforming into somebody not of the same century. I mean, it is the 70s, so fashion is kind of weird then where you like go back to peasant dresses and stuff like that. But she's always like she's doing her hair older and older. She's getting grayer and grayer. She's doing her makeup, her
He
jewelry
has the
differently.
choker.
Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That was
it's
the first
her husband
one.
doesn't question this. Like, there's no point where her husband's like, honey, what's with the new fashion? No, just
Yeah.
ignores it.
Did he not even go, I don't remember you owning that? And I know guys are usually not as paying attention to it, but I would think they would notice
It's a
something that
drastic
blatant.
Yeah.
That blatant of a change. And he's just like, oh, okay, whatever.
This man is bizarre. And I can't decide if Oliver Reed, rest his soul, he is passed, was kind of known for being like an alcoholic bruiser. Famously on the set of Gladiator, he went out to a bar, got in a bar fight, got super, super drunk, went back to the hotel room and died, and that's what happened to him.
Oh my gosh. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot he died during the filming.
It's
Yeah.
not funny, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
He died the way he lived. I mean,
I
you
was
can't
gonna say
get
he
too mad.
died the way he lived, apparently. But he
Yeah.
was something of a bit of a bruiser and kind of known for being like a kind of a tough and like an alcoholic. And so I wonder how much his performance is
Drunk as
just he
fuck.
wasn't there entirely, because it is the weirdest performance.
Agree.
Yeah. It goes from nothing to like, it goes from 0 to 11. Let's just put it that way. It's
Yeah.
deadpan, 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 and then it's like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have a lot of degrees
No,
in this one. And
no,
I don't know, maybe they
There's
didn't
no
have a lot
subtlety.
to work with on the script.
maybe. And I keep wondering because people talk about like the book is really, really good. And I'm like, now I kind of want to get my hands on the book because it has to be better than this.
I hope it was.
You know,
And
there
then
was something about the director. I'm sorry. There's something about the director who said that he had read the book like years before and said that he pitied anybody who's going to try to make it into a movie. And one of the reasons he felt that way is because the ending was so in the book supposedly was so open ended. And so the ending in the movie is supposed to be very different from the book. And I wonder if that was
yeah,
part of the problem, like just the book didn't translate well to film, or they were
what
not good enough to do it well.
what I understand in the book, the father and the son both survive.
I don't know. Like I said, they said it was open ended, so it was kind of hard to say. But I didn't read the book, so I can't tell you.
That's the thing about it is like bare bones, you could see where there could be a really interesting story here
It has
because like the
potential.
pictures, her going through all the pictures and looking at them and all the different ages and the thing and the pictures and the thing, and then that does come to something of a fruition later, but it could have been so much more and more interesting, and it just felt like I don't know if they tried to do too much with too little, or if they were trying to do too little with too much, but it just didn't translate well. And honestly, like some of the best performances were when they were just being people doing stuff around the house. But that wasn't scary. It's just them doing things around the house. It's a really bizarre film. Like one of my favorite little moments is the moment when the dad can't get the suction thing to work when he's trying to clean out the pool. A little boy comes over and is like, "Yeah, dad, it's called a manual choke," and clicks it. And his dad's like, "You think that got it?" And he's like, "Yep." And then they pull it and it works. So the kid obviously knows technology better. I was like, "Is that going to pay off ever?" No, it does not.
Yeah.
The fact that the kid is better technologically than everybody else never pays off, which I was thought that maybe it would. Like at some point there would be a time when something needed to happen and he needed to like run or something, and then he would be able to start like a car or something that, but no, that never paid off in any redeemable way. But it was like a really cute moment between father and son.
Which also made you wonder the whole time because there's this implication that the dad was useless, sort of, you know? Like where did they like? You knew that they didn't have a lot of money. That's okay, cool,
Right.
whatever. You know, it's the 70s, and you knew that the wife was excited about the house, and I don't know. I kind of got the impression maybe she did interior design or something, or housekeeping or green work, because she was making a big deal about what the room needs and cleaning plants. But like, there's a scene basically where Oliver Reed kind of implies that what is there for him to do, and she's like, "We can start working on your PhD or something." So one wonders if he's just been in academia or what he's been doing, because he clearly is not super useful. And you guys will like this. So apparently Bette Davis actually detested Oliver Reed. And she would only refer to him as that man and would only speak to him when they had shared on-screen dialogue. And then after filming, she described him as possibly one of the most loathsome human beings I've ever had the misfortune of meeting. Which makes it even
Wow.
funnier in a bad way, because there's a scene in the movie where Oliver Reed basically pats her on the ass and sort of gropes, which would have added to her not really liking this guy at all. But
Definitely.
sounds like he was just, I mean, well, Bette Davis is notoriously known for not getting along with her castmates in general, but that's pretty much, I don't even think she described Joan Crawford that way. So she was really not liked Oliver Reed at
I
all.
and the script, I mean, her lines, so she had no opportunity for some of her more dramatic acting, that we've seen in other films. She
Just
she
when
could
she falls ill,
she
that's it.
yeah, she except that part, she couldn't go all Bette Davis.
No.
Uh, the role was very restrained, and I think they wasted her on casting her that, but
Yeah,
I mean, as far as those things go, she was one of the best actors in the film.
for sure.
yeah.
She gave one of the best performances, and I think, I mean, a lot of it was done with makeup, but the transition of her from being this vibrant, like 70-year-old woman to this old lady by the time she passes was visceral. Like when she started appearing and she looked more and more haggard and just wasted. When she first appears, her hair is like blonde and in a page, like, and she looks really cute, and she's wearing lipstick, and she's got those big glasses and the hats, and she's all
Fabulous.
bombastic.
She's
It was
fabulous in the
Yeah,
intro.
and it was great. And to by that end, and she's doddering around, and she's so cold, and she's like shriveled up on herself. Physically, it was amazing. And I'm not shocked, because Bette Davis, we know she can do physical amazing. And she's also not afraid to look bad.
Yeah.
So there by the end, I don't think she had any makeup on at all. I think
Well,
that
I
was
think they did because they were enhancing the goddess, but not
well, they were,
makeup to make her look good.
Because they
Yeah.
were trying
yeah,
to go,
not to
I
make her
mean,
look good.
yeah, because you could see like the gray cast, that speaks of serious illness.
Yeah,
But it
but
was
definitely not to pretty her up for
crazy.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, it was beautiful. But again, like,
Well, it almost came off as over the top because everybody else was like not like Oliver Reed's acting was so bad that that pool scene, he actually calls the son by his character's name.
Oh shit, I don't think I caught that.
Yeah, right before when he says to him about how you might be a excellent bicyclist or something like that, but you're a stone in the pool or something like that. You're a brick in the swimming pool. He says, Benji, you might be blah. It's
Oh
the kid's
yeah.
name's Davy, just for the audience who may have not seen this. So it's just, that bad. Well, I'm sorry. Well, I'm thinking about it. This is the other thing that's bad. There's inconsistencies in the movie that make things even more confusing. So the first beginning few scenes of the movie, Oliver Reed's character has glasses on. Then they disappear. And in the pool scene where he nearly kills his son, they make this big deal of him finding glasses in the bottom of the pool. But I didn't catch it as meaning anything because I thought it was his own freaking glasses
Yeah,
because he
that's what
wore
I thought
them
as
and they
well.
were distinct. But here it was supposed to be an old, like, early 19th century pair of glasses, that was supposed to belong to one of the people in the graves that they found, which was a whole wasted scene where they find the bicycle in the old graves and nothing older than the 1800s or newer than the 1800s or something like that. And those glasses were supposed to represent him getting overshadowed and possessed by whoever the Allardytes that wore those glasses were, which was probably shown in one of the pictures. But you would never get that if you didn't read it in a freaking trivia post, because it just looked like he just, like, I thought something hit his glasses and broke them.
see, that's what I thought. I thought he like gave himself a bonk, like he bonked into the bottom of the pool or something and like broke his own glasses. And then he comes up and he's a little dazed and looking at his glasses like, oh damn, I broke my glasses. But that wasn't it. And he never wore his glasses again. But his glasses looked identical to those glasses.
Close enough that you don't really like. I mean, now if you look at them, you probably be like, "Oh yeah, those are nothing like." But like in the movie, when you're watching it and going through the 80,000 freaking commercials that happen on Pluto TV through this doldrum of a movie, they're like, "It's his glasses. Okay, they're broken."
It's some of the things I think that they were trying to, because they were trying to be subtle, they were too subtle. It was too subtle. And I have still no idea how much time took place. I'm assuming it was months before
That
the end
was
of
my
this.
impression, but
Yes, there's a line at some point on the fourth show viewing of this where he said it's nearly the end of the summer. And this, I think, was after Elizabeth's funeral when he was trying to convince her to leave or something like that, that explained to her that this house was going to end. So I assume they almost made it through the summer, but didn't quite. But it took 4 fucking viewings of it to get to that line to sink in. So sorry. It could have been in 2 weeks for the way the movie progresses.
I
and
mean,
then
truly,
the random element of the chauffeur, of the creepy chauffeur from Oliver
Thank you.
Reed's character's flashbacks,
Yeah.
to what is father's funeral. I don't know.
Mother's funeral, yeah.
it's his mother's
Okay.
funeral.
Frankly, my memory is already trying to block out the movie.
What's really funny about that is
But it makes no sense. Sorry, go ahead, Betsy.
if you go to the IMDb, that's conflicting information. That scene, the director swears that it's from his own personal life and he added it in, and then somebody comes in later and is like, that's a lie. It's in the book.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
for some
literally
reason
what
I
it
thought
says. It's
wasn't
funny,
in
you
the
keep
book.
reading and it was like, yeah, like you're right. It literally says the guy nothing about the chauffeur in the book, but the director had when his mom died, he saw a chauffeur laughing and it stuck with him. And then you read down further and like, no, that chauffeur shows up prolifically in the book, and you're like, I haven't read the book, so I don't know
Yeah,
what question to ask you to know which door to go through for the truth teller. I got
and I'm going
nothing.
to be perfectly honest. I was just Googling like to see if I could find like a synopsis of the book, and it is vacant. Like the synopsis of the book is they gradually go insane. I was like, thank you so much. That helped me not at all.
The whole 2 hours of the movie.
Or it brings up biblical reference to burnt offerings.
And that's the other thing that came up.
Yeah.
So the house, though, let's talk about the house for a minute. So there's some interesting trivia that the house is in California. It's a fairly famous house. It's an actual house. You see it in several other movies, including a personal favorite of mine, which is So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Oh yeah.
That's their honeymoon hotel, is this house. They filmed all on location. There was no sound stages for this movie, and they fixed up the house a little. And then they fixed the pool because the pool had been damaged in an earthquake, and they built the greenhouse themselves. Now it's funny because it says they reverted the house back to its original state when they left, and I'm like, did they break the pool? What did they do?
Yes.
And they donated the greenhouse, so which is nice. So, but you can actually go see it if you go into California. So.
Yeah, the house is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice setting for a horror movie because you can use the isolation can be put while all these things are happening is a classic horror element. But
No, I will say one of the bits of trivia and kind of what brought me to this film in the first place was that Stephen King counts it as one of his favorite horror movies and horror properties. And you can definitely see, like, especially if you're someone who watches a lot of Stephen King, which we are, you can see elements of it in The Shining. And Jenny and I were saying we see a lot of elements of it in the movie Rose Red, or the miniseries Rose Red.
TV miniseries,
yeah. And he even stated, like, this was one of the things that he pulled from this, The Haunting of Hill House, and then his own trip to the Stanley Hotel were what inspired him to write The Shining. So, and you can see little bits of it. Like I thought the photos, like the minute I saw the photos, I was like, I've seen The Shining. I know what's going to happen. And it does. It's, oh my God. so you can see where he pulled little bits and things, but honestly, even Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which is not my favorite film, I think it is also very boring in long stretches of time. Sorry, sorry.
All
I'm a
right, I
horror
could
movie
even
person,
sit through The Shining.
and it is the most boring film in the middle. It has a really good end and a pretty fun beginning. And then in the middle, there's a whole lot of dead space where I'm just like, I'm going to take a snooze. Can you wake me up when he goes crazy, please? Thank you. But it's a better film than this. And it shows the descent to madness a little better. Um, it just is. It's just,
Well, to be fair, this movie, if you take out the overshadowing, it's basically just a dysfunctional family on a summer trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that speaks to like my too much, but it's just like it really that's all you're watching, like people not getting along and like not communicating and neglect. I'm like,
You're like, I've lived this.
summer in Youngstown, it's fine.
truly though, it's like, ah, yes, the summer before my parents divorced, a story by Davy. And he's watching his parents, like, and they're taking it out on him because he's there kind of in the middle accidentally, and they're having a horrible time. And then the house eats them.
I think that's a pretty fair write-up.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also what really confused me is like I'm not entirely sure with the whole mother Karen Black thing, what the fuck was going on. Like that's the part that bothered me the most because was the mother a spirit in the room? Was there actually a corporal body of a woman in the room that was like regenerating? Because in the end, it's Karen Black who just becomes the mother. So did she get
I viewed it,
possessed? Was it what was it?
yeah, I viewed it as possession myself.
You know, and
No,
then who ate the first tray that happened before they got there? Because I know she was eating the later trays herself. But
There was at least two trays that were eaten that we didn't see her eat them. We didn't see her actually start to eat them until later. Because at one point she talks to the door and she's like, please eat. Like, this is what they told me to feed you. And then when she comes back up, the food is gone.
mm-hmm.
And she
well,
smiles.
and then when she first gets there, there's a tray that's fully eaten. Like she didn't put it there;
Right.
it was there. Which I mean doesn't mean anything, but it's all very confusing, and therefore you don't really.
I was gonna say, and honestly, like I
By the
wasn't
time
sure if it was that there really was an old lady, and then slowly Karen Black became something, or
it was also
like a straight possession.
yeah, it was also unclear to me with the ending of the movie, the brother and sister. Is this something that does it re-immortalize them, or what's up with them? They're like, oh, we have mother back. Okay, what does that mean? You live in some sort of extended existence, powered by the house?
Yeah,
Right.
that's questionable right there. Yeah,
Mhm.
is now Burgess Meredith walking around because he was in the wheelchair at the beginning. Is Eileen Eckhart younger too now? Like you see, the house is fully regenerated.
Yeah.
But what's funny about the whole Karen Black possession thing is you would think it aged her up, though. You know what I mean? Like, so you would think it's weird because was it drawing from her or was it, and if it's possessing her, shouldn't it make the mother? I don't know. Like, I mean, it was very confusing. Like, how does that work? And yes, excellent question, Rebecca. What happened with the siblings? Did they get better? Did they get to regenerate along with the house? And if so, does it happen at a distance because they weren't in the house when their generation happened
Or
and
is
everything
it,
else seemed to be
are they immortal and just stay the age that they are? So they stay like
the
middle-aged to
caretakers?
semi-old people forever? That's
maybe
shit.
to maybe to appear less
Harmless?
less threatening, so they can easily get new victims into the house.
Maybe.
And it's
Or what about- Sorry, go
it's
ahead.
something to recognize after a while. Wow, people keep disappearing just from this one house.
Yeah. Like, is nobody going to
Right.
look for this family? No questions
Right.
asked? Nothing? No?
I mean,
I mean,
because
Elizabeth had friends, so did they not have friends?
I mean that's the question. Like even like they walked away from a life. What was that life?
Though, according to, Mary and Rolf, that they had nothing to begin with. So maybe that's what I don't know. It's just very like, I hate to read the book because if, this is the solution to an open-ended ending of the book, this is still pretty fucking open-ending. Like the only thing you know for sure is Anne Elizabeth is dead. Dad, Benji Rolf is dead. Davy Rolf is dead. What the fuck happened to Miriam Rolf? She's not dead, but she's kind of dead.
Right?
Yep.
And then, and here's props to Carrie Black. So, like, she's awful's not the right word, but as we already mentioned, she's clearly struggling to find out how to portray whatever the hell they wanted. I would say it's probably bad direction or bad, like, because she's a great act. She was a great actor. She died in
I
2013.
was gonna say maybe because I don't remember who the director is. Because if there was a lack of effective directing, then
I forgot his name too, but at any rate, but she doesn't come to really until the very end when she does that creepy "I am clearly fully possessed" thing and basically throws her husband out the window. Like the rest of the movie, she could just be a sack of she could be squirrels in a trench coat. It actually would have been better. It's just Dan
His
Curtis,
name
I
is
think, was the
Dan
actual
Curtis.
director.
Yeah, Dan Curtis is the director.
I did he do Trilogy of Terror too?
I'm looking. He definitely directed Dark Shadows, so that's
oh
something.
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was the work here, if they really just, I don't know. But you could see where it should have been good. Like I kind of feel like Rose Red is what this should have been. If you take out the psychics or something, you know what I mean? Or even like, Shirley
Terror.
Jackson. Shirley Jackson was supposed to be uh an influence on this. So she wrote the books, the short stories that basically became The Haunting on Hill House. That's her, amazing writer. Look her up. But
Fantastic. She was one of my favorites.
but I mean, like it should have been The Haunting. It should have been, but it wasn't.
I've seen the original black and white Haunting. This was so far from it in quality and it may have been inspired by this movie may have been inspired by her writings, but boy,
it didn't live up to it. No.
Yeah,
The Haunting is much better than this. Yes, for sure. And
One of
The
my
Haunting in the
favorite
1961 is not super great either. But
I'm like, here's the deal. I don't think they've even made a really good haunting movie. Really, I mean, I love the one with Vincent Price. It's hilarious, but it's not like a real haunted house movie. It's different. But this is just not. It just doesn't reach the level that I feel like it could have, and it's not even like an effects thing. It's just not.
They don't follow through with their setups. Like you said, you have that whole scene in the cemetery. They don't really tie it in to do anything with it. It should have. They could have done more with the pictures. Like there should have been things where you were like really clued in. Where wouldn't it have been something like if when Aunt Elizabeth started getting sicker and sicker that you started seeing like a picture show up that looked a little like her or something before the very end.
They should have done more. Even if they showed a trend of like, oh my gosh, it's the same person across 120 years of photos.
Right.
Or put the siblings in front of the house picture so you can see them not aging along with the house,
That would have been effective. Because they showed the house, but showing me that the house doesn't really change doesn't mean anything. That means it's really well kept.
House?
Yeah, it's a house. The house doesn't change that much unless you let it fall into disrepair, which the idea is like this was a pretty well kept house, so it doesn't change much.
Better yet, put people who had rented the house in the cemetery so you would have names that aren't Allardyces, so that they would go, that's weird. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, see, that would have made more sense to me if they had like weird little separate family plots in there. Like, wait a minute, who are the Hoopers? And you're like, oh, that's weird. An entire family of Hoopers died in this house too. Is it somehow related to the Allardyce? And just give them that minute of like, something seems weird here. Because finding a bike in a cemetery is not that odd. Sorry.
Not in
Yeah.
a family plot cemetery, no, for sure. Just abandoned bike in
No.
the woods, basically, is what it was.
Yeah, they
With
lost
who?
a lot of chances because other than the house renewing itself, which you don't even really see a huge amount until the end,
Mm-mm.
there's not really a lot that they did with the environment to make it creepy.
Yeah.
No.
And
Well,
that's
here's another one for you. Sorry, because back to your point
yeah,
about they don't do much to show. So there's a scene after the first time that Davy was nearly killed, the one where his father nearly killed him in the pool, where Marion comes out and she looks at the pool and the fountain and stuff, and she goes, "It's completely different." But as a viewer, I didn't see that it was completely different. I'm like, what?
yeah,
And I was not going to rewind it.
It was
you know,
slightly less dirty. That's it. Like, but it wasn't
So
completely different. What they
yeah,
almost needed to do was like film the pool scenes before they repaired the pool so that it would be broken and like kind of lost. I think the house needed to be more messed up when they started so that we could gradually watch as it got nicer and nicer. Because there was also the one hint of it regenerating itself was the kid, the light bulb being out and then being like, oh, you need to replace the light bulb, and then the light bulb coming back on by itself.
but it's so subtle you probably miss it, especially on the commercial TV version, because you're like,
yeah.
Well,
you know,
that's not, that wasn't, honestly, the first time I saw it, I was like, that doesn't mean that the house is regenerating. It means, I mean, sometimes the bulb is just not all the way in or
It's an
whatever.
old house, the
Or
wires
it's an
may be fucked up. Oh.
like, okay,
That's not exactly a
all the
signal of
time.
weirdness.
I was going to say, my house is 100 years old. Sometimes I turn on the light switch and the light doesn't come on, and I turn it back off and turn it back on, and the light comes on. It's not
Well,
good, but it does
yeah.
happen.
Or when I used to like I would turn my light on in the bedroom or the bathroom, which are really close together in my house, and my smoke alarm would go off.
that's terrifying.
Yes, it was. I got a new one.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something like I think the wallpaper was probably repairing something, but it's also subtle, you can't see it. And here's another one for you ladies. So you know how like they kind of make it a point of her bringing out newer and different stuff to use from the house, but and I think that was supposed to be significant, like the house as it was sucking the life out of people was offering, here's a silver tea service, but you can't. I mean, it feels like a reach because you don't know what was, it would have been better if it just like they had a scene where the thing would manifest. Like she opened a cupboard and nothing was there. And then like, Anne Elizabeth comes
Well,
down
5 minutes
talking about
later.
feeling very weak. And then she opened the same cupboard and there was like some kind of fabulous house relic that
Yeah.
wasn't there. So
Yes.
would have been a better way to do it. Cause I think that's what they were trying to imply. But I mean, aside from like the real obvious one, like after Elizabeth dies, where like the greenhouse is now in full fucking bloom, it's just so subtle that you're not really sure it's happening, especially
Mhm.
when it's such a dull movie and you're watching it on commercial TV.
Yeah.
You're like, is this supposed
And
okay, yay, a tea
it's
service. I
really
don't know.
hard to pay attention when the movie is so dull. Because you're like, no, 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 I need to pay attention, see what's going on. And you're like, "No, no, no, no," and wandering off. Oh,
Yeah, and especially once the commercial comes on, because then you're
oh
totally
God, yeah.
wandering off and then
I
you
mean,
like
I
miss the first.
totally, the first time the attack happened with Benji and Davy in the pool,
Mhm.
I was not paying attention because Betty Davis starts to freak out immediately when they're just playing in the pool.
Yeah.
So she's already going, Benji, stop it, when he's just like tossing him into the pool. And I was like, Betty Davis, calm your tits, lady. Like, he's just playing with his kid. And then it starts to ratchet. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now she should be freaking out because she started at such a high level and the music started at such a high level. It had already built. By the time he's attacking the kid, I'm like, what is happening? I didn't even realize that it had gone malevolent because the music had already switched to malevolent. Like the minute he hit that pool, it switched to malevolent. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You should have waited and started that malevolent music once it was obvious that he was losing it and he was starting to drown his child.
Yeah.
But before that, they were
Agreed.
literally just playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
So
was
I had
jumping
to,
off his shoulders into the water, nothing big.
yeah, I had to rewind it twice to
I'm sorry.
figure out. I'm like, I have missed something so vital. When did this switch? And I realized like there's no real switch. Like it's that like weird and abrupt that he's roughhousing with him in the pool, and then suddenly he's got him in a headlock.
Yeah, it's not good.
It was like the horror episodes were either on or off.
Yeah,
There didn't seem to be a lot of in between.
No.
I agree. I think you're absolutely. I think you actually hit the nail on the head, Betsy. Is they start it up here so that when it builds, there's no build. It's already there.
Yeah, we're
So
already there. Do you know what when you're writing, they would call that show don't tell? They're telling us that there's something wrong, and they should be showing us that there's something wrong. And it's a very subtle difference, but it's a big difference when you're watching something like this because they're just going, and look how weird this is. They're not saying, doesn't this seem a little weird to you? And it's a subtle difference.
And it
It's a
too,
difference.
because it allows the latter allows your imagination to start filling in all these
Yes.
details, and they don't leave room with that sudden, all right, hey, look, this is bad all the way. They don't leave room for you to fill in your own horror, and I think that's where it falls flat.
It is. Because by the time the house is actually eating the people, I'm like, I don't feel like this is deserved. Like, I don't understand how we got to this point, really. It ratchets up so fast that I'm like, oh, well, now everybody's dead.
Yeah.
ABC School After Special Dysfunctional Family, comment here. That's the other thing too. Like a lot of what they were like trying to show is like the build to it. Again, it just seems like a normal, well, normal not being the right word, but a not great family situation that you could see every day.
Well, that's it.
Like even the roughhousing of the pool, like I have seen where you had like the alpha, you know, male type person wrestling with the kid, and then like they suddenly decide that they got to prove that they're the big dick swinger, and then they're not trying to kill the kid, but they're trying to make the kid scared as fuck. And I unfortunately have seen that far too many times in reality. So yeah, I mean, like, the whole problem with your watching this movie is that unless you lived in a nice, much more stable environment than did, and never watched an ABC School After Special or After School Special, like you're like, oh, okay. I guess that was a little more extreme than it should have been.
But it really was.
It's
It
so
wasn't like it wasn't extreme enough. What we needed was him literally holding the kid's head underwater. Because when he had him was in a headlock, and the kid was obviously scared, but he wasn't holding him underwater. Now, not suggesting that they torture this child by holding him underwater. That is not what I'm suggesting happens.
You've got to drown them right.
Yeah.
However, no point during that whole thing did I think this child is in serious danger. I just thought Dad's getting really rough with him, and that is wild. But it wasn't like he's in danger. It was like he's got him in a headlock, and the kid is obviously not happy and very distressed. And Dad should probably let him go. But I didn't think that he was going to kill his child. Now, if he had been literally holding him underwater, I'd have been like, whoa, shit. Like,
Which I think at the very end finally happened, but like by the time it did, you were like, oh, okay. Because you're right. I mean, the whole time Bette Davis is at 11. And I think that woman was so desperate to make a good acting scene in this terrible fucking movie that she boom, boom,
Believe
boom. When
that.
she had the opportunity, she was just like, I'm at, the whole scene where it's like, yeah, she was more subtle in whatever happened to baby Jane than she was. Disrespect, but you could tell that she was just like, I got to do something because this is shit.
I have to interject something into this film. Bam, here it is.
Which is also one of the better scenes Karen Black has as well. That's like really the first time you really see her acting for the most part.
Yeah, the scene with
God
her
love
and
her.
Bette Davis.
I'm sure she was trying, but it just was not working very well. I don't think they gave her very much to work with at all.
No.
And
Well,
Karen Black, man, I'll tell you what, she worked up, it seems like, to the day she died. So, like I said, she died in 2013, and there's still post-production stuff that's got bits of her in it that hasn't come out yet. So she must have been like boom, 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 boom. Good for her if that's what she wanted to do.
I was gonna say, if that's what she liked, then
What
but
better way to go, right? And what a legacy. But this
oh,
is not one of her
absolutely.
finer
This is
pieces.
not one of her finest films.
yeah, but
No.
everybody has some downtime, and I think this was one of those films
Yeah.
that you
All
take
I
because
can
you
think
need the
is
paycheck, and you
yeah,
need the insurance.
there are 100 better haunted house films
House.
that have happened since this, and I would
And
watch
before it.
any one of those.
Mhm.
Any one of them. There are better films with every single one of these actors in them. Uh, for Lee Montgomery, the kid, please just watch Girls Just Want to Have Fun. It's a blast and really dumb. So
He's
do it.
adorable in it.
Oh man, he's so good. Uh, so it's worth it. Uh, Oliver Reed, I mean, if you want to go Oliver, he's scary as hell in that. So where was his, we know he can do menacing. We know he can. Like we've seen him do it. John Sykes is maybe still one of the scariest characters I've ever seen in a musical, and it was him all the way. And he creeped the shit out of me when I was a kid. It took me a long time to be able to watch a movie of his without getting really, really freaked. Just tell you that. But
Yeah.
none of that here, and we know he can do it. So what?
Yeah, what happened? What went wrong?
What went wrong
And
for this
I
particular
think
production? Because all of these people should have been very right for this production, and it
and
just
it
didn't work.
I think to a degree maybe the material, the actual storyline needed significant working over. Um,
Yeah,
an entire script rewrite honestly would have been necessary for this one.
Yeah, maybe it should
Um,
have been a mini series. I mean, like I said, I have not read the book, but like one of the first thing was, like I said, that Dan Curtis, the director, had read the book and said he pitied anybody trying to make this into a movie. So he was
and then he
clearly not
did.
up to the challenge. My apologies to him, but the screenwriter, I don't know who that was either. Sorry about that. Clearly also not up to the challenge.
And not every book translates well to the screen. So,
but
and unfortunately, without having read the book, I can't really say, if that is one of those issues or not.
yeah, or maybe it translated directly and it's just something better that you,
This is
when
true.
you
Yeah, maybe it
visualize yourself,
translated
you can
directly and it was
stare
shit.
versus, yeah.
and you think about things like so. We were talking about like leaving things to the imagination, and sometimes what you have to do is just build the suspense but not let the suspense spill over, because I will fill in the blank with what is the creepiest thing to me for this. And I think in a different director's hands that might have happened. Like I can think of directors that would have let it build and build and build and build until you were doing things in your head that are way creepier than anything that he could do on screen. I just
Yeah,
don't think
it's
this
like,
was the thing.
It just didn't
well,
happen
see,
in this case.
I always said I can imagine worse pain than I've ever felt. Because, like, in my mind, the way something should feel painful versus when the actual pain is very different. I mean, don't get me wrong, fucking still hurts, but like, the way I would imagine something stabbing into your finger versus when something does stab into your finger, two different things. So a lot of that, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And maybe that's the thing with the book. Like the book might have been something where it left it more to your imagination. Therefore, you fill in the blanks and make it the scariest, best haunted house story you ever read. But then when you fill in the blanks to try to put it into screen, it just does not work, at least in this visualization of it at all.
Well, the
It's just not
screenplay,
scary. It's annoying. This movie is just annoying.
Yeah, I feel like they could have cut about half the time out of it.
Yeah, I mean, because by the time you get to the end, you're like, you should have left 3 incidences ago easily. Well, you should have never rented the house to begin with, for one. But once you did, maybe yeah, after the first near death experience, you should have been gone. And after that, we're just waiting for you to die. We
Mhm.
just,
You were just
I mean,
waiting for this to finally end,
it's awful. Like
one
you
way
don't
or
even
the
feel
other.
sorry for the kid that much in the end when you see the wires pull the chimney over on him, which by the way was just a horribly bad, poorly done. They didn't. You can see the cables. There's a
Yep.
couple of scenes like that too, where you're like, maybe they did have editing tools back then. They weren't the greatest, but you could have done it.
Mhm.
You, hell, at this point, you could have just had some dude back there pushing it, and it would have looked better than what you did. Come on, come on, y'all.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
seems
I
like
mean,
a very
this
low
elephant,
effort movie.
I mean, the creepiest element was the chauffeur, and I just felt like they didn't do anything with it really. And then especially the last scene you really see him in with the whole when he shoves the casket into Aunt Elizabeth's room. Like, because one, you're really confused if both Aunt Elizabeth and Benji are seeing it, or if it's just, yeah. Well, the phone thing, that was another one that was like really just too subtle to really know what the hell was going on. Because he supposedly goes downstairs to try to call the doctor or the operator, and there's a business period, so he can't get the phone line to work at all. Then the wife says that she was able to get through to the doctor, and then she goes up in the room and just starts eating Mrs. Allardyce's meal, and then a hallucination happens and she dies. Elizabeth, not the wife. So you're like, did the doctor ever come? Why the fuck didn't they just load Aunt Elizabeth up into the damn car?
Yeah,
right.
because it's going to take you, if you're out in the country, you're looking at least half an hour to get to
Anyway,
anything, if not more. I get the feeling that this was way the fuck out there.
yeah, I mean, it would take just as
Um,
long to take her to town as it would for the doctor to get out to them,
yeah.
or an ambulance for that matter. So yeah, like the whole scene didn't make any sense. Like, why did they do nothing else to try to save her? Why did he just sit by her bed watching her?
I sort of took that as she said she called, but she didn't. And then they just cut a whole lot of shit out from there to the funeral.
Entirely possible. But again, why did Benji not just pick her up and take her when 20 minutes went by? Or was the timeline that quick where she said she called and then like 10 minutes later Aunt Elizabeth died? I don't know. It's real hard to tell.
There's no sense of time within the film.
No, I think that is the most frustrating thing, especially since they talk about the clocks all the time. You would think that there would be a clear passage of time in this film, and there's not a clear passage of time. I would even like it if every once in a while we knew that it was exactly 3 o'clock in the morning and somebody woke up at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. Every day they wake up at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning because that's something. And it, ties something together or whatever. But there's none of that. There's nothing that makes any sense. And then he even confronts her about the clocks. Like, how did you burn all the clocks? And I'm like, what are you implying that the clocks magically wound themselves? In which case, I need you to say, did the clocks magically wind themselves? Because I think that was the implication. But again, he just confronts her and says, how did you wind all those clocks by yourself?
You're like, she took the time. Ha ha.
I was going to say,
pun intended.
methodically, one at a time.
Yeah. I think in many ways, I think you had mentioned this earlier, they were trying for subtle and they were too subtle.
Yeah, it just didn't work. If you're going to do subtle, you have to do a lot more consistent clues, and they were not consistent with them.
No.
They were just random, odd, subtle clues that didn't seem to tie in together. There was nothing that glued them together for you to go, oh, So, I mean, you knew that the house was eating them basically, and that Mrs. Allardyce was clearly taking over Marion Rolfe's character, but you didn't, again, unclear how the mechanism that was actually happening there, if there was actually a physical Mrs. Allardyce anywhere. Like, it's very, that part they left open-ended, but it was left in an open-ended sense where it just made you go.
Yeah.
Like, it's the where's the dog syndrome. I mean, aside from the fact that we really like dogs, but you're focusing on something that is not really important to the story because the story is so bad that you're just detailing what the fuck, but what, so.
Honestly, you're working so hard to find the subtle clues that you're paying attention to clues that aren't even clues because you can't tell the difference between what's actually a clue and what's just some happenstance that happens. You have to be able to clearly delineate what is actually moving the plot along and what is just something that happened today. Like the trays, we were talking about the trays. Sometimes they're important and sometimes they're not, but I was always looking at those trays. Always looking at those trays because I have to pay attention to something, guys. I have to pay attention to something. The times when the music box was playing. That was obviously meant to mean something. Was that how she was getting bespelled?
I believe so, but yeah.
But I need it to be clearer for me, please. So every time she does something weird, maybe we need to hear that like it's happening in her head.
That would have been good. Or see an overshadowing happen, like, a superposition
Yes.
of another form over her while the music box played. I don't know, something. I mean, it's kind of there in the sense that they make a very big point where she's just sitting there staring, listening to the music box when Benji is drowning Davy in the pool. But but that's like the only scene where it's really obvious. The rest of it, you're
Right.
right. Like, is this constantly now the earworm in her head where she's slowly having her mind eaten by this music boxes and the conduit for Mrs. Allardyce taking her over? Who knows?
It's never made clear. I could talk about this for hours because it's fascinating how it's not a good film, but you can see how it could have been. And this is a 13 women of a film. I mean, where I'm constantly thinking, like, if they'd have only done this, if they could have taken it just this much. This is another one of those films where I'm like, I'm going to try to find this book and read it. But I'm thinking that there may have been like a way that you could have adjusted this, that you could have done this. But what I think happened was it did happen, and it was by Stephen King later, because he knows how to develop a script
Yes.
well and ease those clues in and do that. And I think that's what happened is he wrote a book later that was a better version of this. And eventually a screenplay later that was a better version of this in Rose Red, because it's more interesting. It's another one about a house that's kind of, possessed and taking people over, and there's like the rocks falling from the sky and stuff, and it's very, very interesting and has a mega cast. But it's better than this, and it's more developed, and it's creepier because it has little elements of creep all the time. It's also 4
But you've
hours long.
got a woman obsessed with the house. That's
Yes.
Nancy Travis's character. You've got the house that's filled with ghosts, and the family that's kept alive by the house constantly growing and building. So yeah, Stephen King maybe forgot that he was influenced by it, but if you watch that miniseries, you'd be like, oh hell yeah, he was influenced by this. And they even in the lecture that Nancy Travis does in the beginning, she even calls out Shirley Jackson and her stories of haunted houses. So
Well, and he straight up said that I was going into a red rose hole because I really like that miniseries. And so that I was like, I'm going to find that and watch it. It's been a minute. And
free on YouTube. Google it on YouTube or look it up in YouTube directly. Sorry.
so he straight up was like, Shirley Jackson. This is the Haunting of Hill House. This is the Winchester Mansion. It's a couple different things, but this is what he was using. And his own work, which I loved. He's like, I was influenced by The Shining a little bit. And I was like, dude, you can't list yourself as an influence for you. Steven. But
yeah, the movie was. I don't think you can even really call it a disappointment. It was just so bland. It just melts into the background.
it really does. Like, we've had far more bizarre and disappointing films. Scream and Scream Again. But this one was just like a nothing of a film. It just was.
Surprised it didn't fade into complete obscurity. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I guess
And
it kind of did, and we brought it back, so I guess that's our fault. But I mean,
no, but like on IMDb, there are people who are like one of the scariest horror films I've ever seen. I was like, then you have never seen a horror film.
Yeah, they must have not seen many for sure.
Because Nosferatu was scarier than this, and it was in 1923, guys.
Agree. I've had many discussions on different film forums how it's still fucking creepy. This one, yeah, there's no creep.
No creep. There's no creep.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because it didn't age well. Like maybe in 1976, people watching this would have been like, "Oh my God, this is terrifying." I
And
can't imagine, but it could be possible. I was one. It might have scared me if I was a 1-year-old watching it. I don't know.
I mean, I guess if there was no Amityville Horror, if there was no Shining, if there was no
Exorcist, if there was no
Exorcist, if there was
Jaws,
no, yes, if there were no other
other horror
films,
movies ever.
yes, if there was no Psycho, because Psycho had the weird mother character who doesn't actually exist.
Yeah,
If
that
there
was
was
one thing. When you see Oliver Reed's character walking in there, and he sees just the from the back, I'm like, oh, this is a real Psycho moment here. Even though
thought
you
that too.
knew when to turn around, it was going to be the wife.
Yeah, yeah, it
Very much
was.
alive.
Agreed. There was no surprise when but you're right. It was very much Mrs. Oh,
Yeah.
It's worse. It's my wife.
and another ode to Karen Black when she does the possessed face and like jump out at you thing. It's amazing. Like she did it great in this one, and again, Trilogy of Terror when she finally gets taken over by the Zuni monster. The end scene where she's like, "It's beautiful. I can't reenact it. She does it well. She was amazing. This is a bad example of her. I'm sorry,
I was
but
going to
the
say,
end
this is not
scene
the best
with her
example.
face in it was wonderful."
She does creepy really, really well. But some of those in between scenes when I don't know what they told her to act like, but I don't feel like it was the best acting that's ever happened. And I don't, like we said, is it a direction thing? Maybe they were like, no, we need you to be softer, less crazy. And she's like, but crazy is better for me.
Here's
Go for
another good
fancy
example of
distracted, I suppose.
yeah. Here's another really good example of too subtle to really know what's going on. The whole skinny dip scene in the pool where Oliver Reed's making advances and she's kind of like no, yes, no, and like if you really pay attention after watching the movie 4 times, please don't watch the movie 4 times unless you really want to torture yourself. But like where it starts coming across eventually is what she was trying to do there is kind of come across as an older prudish woman is kind of what you eventually get that she was trying to do where he's like, yeah, it's good for the circulation, and she's like, my circulation is just fine. You can almost hear an implied young man in there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but like, and then when she gets out of the pool and then then he's like, I know I'm repulsive to you now, and she's like, no, you're still extremely sexy. And then he tries to have sex with her again, and you see her look up at the window that's Mrs. Allardyce's window with the light on, and then she's like, you can't, you can't, you can't, you can't. And like again, it's really confusing, but I think it was supposed to be because the body now belonged to Mrs. Allardyce, and like the rejection was actually Mrs. Allardyce pushing her away. But it's
Maybe.
so weird and random that like it's really conjecture. And maybe I was trying to give it more depth because dear God, this movie sucked. Like again, it's not the worst movie, but I was trying to give it something to make it be better.
Yeah.
And
Throughout that's I think what the whole watching experience is like. You kept trying to pull something great from this film, and there wasn't anything.
there wasn't anything. And
If they were doing that, that would have been great had they done it better and not so subtle.
Yeah.
and Oliver Reed and Karen Black had no chemistry, which is also why it felt like they were a couple who were on the outs, who were maybe this was a last ditch effort. Like, all right, let's go away to the country for a summer and try to get our shit together and see how it goes. And then this is what happens. But I wish they had just said that because that's what it felt like because they had zero chemistry. Zero chemistry. Like I honestly didn't think they wanted to touch each other at all, which they might not have wanted to, but I shouldn't know that.
Unless that was supposed to be part of the movie, we should not know that. You're right. Which I would guess it was not supposed to be part of the movie. But then again, hard to tell because they made it implied in that whole skinny dip pool scene that it had been a while since they had been physical with each other, even though they shared a bed and she came down saying, I can't go to bed without you.
Yeah.
That
So
was
it's
the
all
part
very
that
confusing.
confused me.
It's very confusing.
It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Not a lot in this movie did, honestly. I think, you're really reaching to try to find something meaningful.
No, I think you're right. I think what you said is accurate, is that this whole movie, especially because we watch movies like this all the time, I was stretching to try to make meaning and make quality out of something that there just wasn't anything there to grab onto. So you're trying to be like, okay, maybe they were trying to do this, but I have no proof that's what they were trying to do. Like, I'm just doing conjecture because otherwise it doesn't make sense as a film. It literally loses everything, and then all of a sudden it's very, very haunted and everybody dies.
I mean, the parts that consistently make sense, if they had looped those all together and took away the rest of the stuff, the movie would have been 15 minutes long.
That's very true. So
Maybe. It would have been a better movie, don't get me wrong.
maybe
It would have been
maybe it would have
short.
worked better as a short film instead of nearly 2 hours of dullness.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Actually,
and
that's the
maybe,
key. Either they should have shortened it or it should have been a miniseries.
yes, it is one of those things where it's like you either need to take out a lot of stuff and make this very, very short. They rent the house, everything goes wrong, and it's all wrapped up in 30 minutes. It's a Twilight Zone episode. Or
Yeah.
we have 8 hours consistent and
Run
really
out
building
over
that
a week.
suspense. Yeah, really building that suspense, really building it. See the kids start to go through a change as well, because we never got to really see that. He was a
No.
victim the whole time. So we never got to see him really, because according to the book, in the book, all of them go through a transformation. The whole family.
He
We
doesn't.
never see that from the kid. He just was a victim the whole time. That poor kid is just, they're sucking the life out of that kid, literally sucking the life out of that kid. He almost dies like 4 times before the collapse happens. So we don't see any of that. And I don't know if that was, I'm gonna say it's not that he couldn't act it, because later that kid actually has pretty good chops. And some of the scenes he's quite good. Like he's very funny and very personable. So I think they just weren't trying very hard or giving him anything to work with,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate.
I mean, they completely changed the arc of this to the husband and the son.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, we could probably go on forever, but I guess final thoughts, ladies, because
I really wanted this movie to be good. I did. I looked at the cast. I was like, please be good. And it was not. So if you do watch it, or it's just, you're going to be bored out of your mind. So maybe skip this one.
Skip this, go find Rose Red and watch it instead. I think it still has, I mean, it probably still has things that don't age particularly well. It is Stephen King, but it's better. It's a better film. It's 4 hours long, I will warn you, but it's an entertaining 4 hours, and at no point are you sleeping. So watch it instead.
yeah.
I would say The Shining, but don't watch The Shining. It is also boring. Sorry, Kubrick fans. It's just not my jam. Just not my jam.
So I'll say this, it's not good. I will say definitely don't pay money to watch this. It is free on Pluto TV. I will warn you, it's more of a chore because it has commercials. So if it ever is streaming somewhere for free without commercials, that would be the more ideal situation. My suggestion is if you want to see it just to experience the weirdness of what it is, which is not a bad thing.
It's perfectly
Um,
reasonable plan.
Get some friends, maybe make a drinking game out of it, every time something that makes absolutely no sense and goes nowhere. Take a
I don't know
shot,
if you can do that. You
something.
might get alcohol poisoning.
You might die, maybe put a water shot or two in there in between, so you're hydrating in there. But make it fun. Get your your MST3K crew together to just play with the movie. So I would say there is some merit in the sense that you can see where it influences later works. And it's Bette Davis for sure, and Karen Black and Oliver Reed, just in Burgess Meredith and Eileen Heckart. But it's just not a good movie. It's not, and it is very dull. So don't be like on the verge of falling asleep unless you need a cure for insomnia, and then go ahead with your bad self, watch it and go to sleep. But yeah, I'm not mad I watched it. I wanted more. I wanted
Yeah.
better.
And if you're watching this and you know me, you can borrow the DVD because I now own it. So you can watch
It'll
it
save
without
you from
ads.
the commercials.
Just let me know.
That get another episode of Girls Go Schools. If you want, go watch 13 Women again, see if you remember what Betsy's talking about about a 13 women incident. It's one of our earlier ones. But thanks for bearing with us. I'm Jenny.
Rebecca.
I'm Betsy.
You have been listening to the Girls Go Schools podcast. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Girls Go Schools podcast, on Twitter at Girls Ghost Pod. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girls Go Schools podcast, and find our podcast on your favorite podcatcher.